Talk to me about Peter Dutton. He's only been in the job less than a week, the new Defence Minister. He's hit the ground running. He's put a lot of contractors who are delivering our defence and military acquisitions on notice that he's going to demand better attention to detail and deadlines, it would seem.
Yeah, so it's good to have an active First Division politician as Defence Minister. Dutton is the most significant domestic politician to be Defence Minister, I guess, since Robert Hill or Brendan Nelson or somebody. You know, Peter, this is bizarre, but we've had nine Defence Ministers in 14 years. The Coalition has had 6 in its 8 years in office, and Labor had 3 in its 6 years in office. And I'm very critical
Goodness me.
Yeah, and I love them both dearly, but I am very critical of Scott Morrison for appointing Linda Reynolds, and I'm very critical of Tony Abbott for appointing David Johnson. Those 2 terrible appointments led to a lot of misery in Defence subsequently. You have to see Defence as the 2nd or 3rd most important job in government, certainly next only to the Treasury. And you need to have a top performer. Now, it's right for Dutton to tell the contractors to, you know, stand up and pay attention and deliver on time and all the rest of it. I have a slightly different concern. This government has embarked on a very big defence expansion of our capabilities. It's too slow and it's too late, but it's much better than nothing, and it's much better than the other side of politics was doing. However, because there's been a complete vacuum in defence, we had these 2 silent Defence Ministers, Linda Reynolds and Maurice Payne. The widespread perception has got round that the subs are duds, the frigates are a waste of time, the Joint Strike Fighters can't fly. Now, we are uniformly purchasing the best defence equipment in the world, and the government can't even sell it to its own troops. So the National Party conference, federal conference the other day, defeated only 54 to 50 a motion demanding that the government abrogate the French subs contracts, which would be a catastrophic disaster now and ensure that we had no subs capability at all in 15 years' time. And government members, even people who know a lot about national security, don't defend these programs. Now, it may be that the government has allowed all this to become so toxic that there's a bigger political benefit for it to beat up on its own programs. But, Peter, in my view, if you'll indulge me, this is terribly dangerous, because if the Coalition loses next time, Labor will have a perfect example to say, well, these programs, they're all Coalition messes. We're going to abolish them all and start all over again and pay a few $1 billion to get out of the contracts. And, of course, that would be catastrophic, but that's what so often happens in our nation. So one thing Dutton has to do is to re-socialise the nation about the importance of our defence capabilities and the utility of the capabilities the government is building.
Don't think for a minute that there's a cunning plan. I've always been on the inside seeing that stuff up beats conspiracy every time. I think it's been an absence of leadership from previous incumbents in that defence portfolio, Greg. Their inability to get out there into the national debate and to talk about these acquisitions. Not that people just have to understand the hardware, but also they understand the strategic import of why we are purchasing what we are purchasing, and understanding some of the timelines and deadlines involved and why they matter. I think that's where Peter Dutton will be very, very strong. But, you know, we've got an election in the offing. He'll be lucky if he's in the role for 12 months. So let's hope he makes a difference. Hey, great article from you on the weekend, interview you had with former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. This was in The Australian, for those who haven't read it. Tell me what he had to say about the origins of COVID and his whole take on Taiwan. I think that's important as well.
Well, thanks so much, Peter. And look, thanks for letting me get that stuff about the defence capabilities off my chest. It's a very important dialogue. Look, Pompeo is great. Pompeo is the adult version of Donald Trump. He's Donald Trump for grown-ups or for people who live in the real world. You know, he's got all the good policy instincts of Trump, but he's actually a sensible, responsible human being who is in touch with reality. So he gives Joe Biden a broad pass mark for his early policy on China, but he's very critical of him for his policy on Iran. So that's very interesting, shows how bipartisan the China stuff is. He agrees with the US Pacific Commander, Admiral Davidson, I think it is, that China could well take military action against Taiwan in the next few years, which means that the national security situation we're facing is immense and overwhelming. I mean, think for a minute, if that happens, we won't be able to export any iron ore or coal or anything else to China. That market disappears in a minute, you know, even beyond what the military conflict will mean for us. He also thinks that the virus originated in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, I honestly disagree with him about that. I think that's probably wrong. But he puts it in a completely rational, sensible way. He says, you cannot know for sure, so he doesn't claim that he knows that it originated there. He thinks the balance of probabilities is. Now, the Australian agencies, I've spoken to them, and their view is that it could possibly have originated in the lab, but it probably didn't. So both Pompeo and our agencies are sort of dealing with the same range of possibilities. They're just weighting the probabilities a bit differently. And the point he makes is the Chinese have engaged in such a massive cover-up of this stuff that it's perfectly legitimate to draw negative conclusions. Although he did also say to me that he thinks there's no suggestion at all that they released it deliberately. He thinks it's most likely that it came as an accident. And, you know, he puts a very sophisticated case to that effect.
Long way to run. I think, yeah, well, I hope we find out what really happened, but it's China, so I have a discount factor there. But we'll see. You'll stay across it.